Reluctant Entrepreneur Tarot. I'm Diana Ideas, Master Certified Coach, and this video takes you behind the scenes of Reluctant Entrepreneur Tarot, Card 16, Failure. So if you are not familiar with tarot and you were just told which card is worse, Death, Devil, or the Tower, and you weren't looking at the deck, or frankly, even if you are looking at the deck, it's unlikely that you would pick the Tower just because not knowing what that is, not having the context. What I'll say from knowing tarot and my personal opinion is the Tower is the worst. This is the one of the big three that I have the most trouble with. Now, some people may say Death. It's possible that some people may say Devil, because Devil is more internal demons versus the external kind of Saturn returns that happens to you. For me personally, the foundation shaking from the sky, it's on fire, falling to your death, everything's going to crumble of the Tower is the most challenging, which is why this particular card is associated with failure. But these three are not a pretty three. So there's no bad or good cards in tarot, but at the same time, these big three are not a walk in the park, which is actually part of why they're spaced out, well, a part of why I believe that they're spaced out a little bit. But these also shape the Fool and the Fool's journey. So an entrepreneur who has survived these things is likely to be much stronger, even though it's one of those what doesn't kill us makes us stronger kind of segment of the journey. So in this particular deck, Death is closure, the Devil is doubt, and then failure is the Tower. So these are the big three: facing closure, potential closure, client closure, just the mourning of the loss in the cycle, even if down the road you know that winter is only a season. Doubt is that insidious in your head. Can you do this? Is this gate locked? Is that guardian there to protect you or not protect you? How are your habits self-sabotaging you, limiting beliefs, like are they serving you or not serving you? There's a strange kind of addictive opt-in to the Devil. So doubt can be sometimes feel safer for people to doubt themselves and not take the step than it is to actually take the step, be that into entrepreneur life or the other. Failure is just rough because ultimately the Tower says this is not going to serve you. It's not going to last. Like Saturn returns, though it's tested and though it's challenging, what emerges from the Tower or what emerges from Saturn returns in astrology is supposed to be better and stronger and more sustaining. But failing and or experiencing the Tower is not a fun ride. So thankfully we get two brief kind of respites. So Temperance comes in with balance. It's that divine angelic intervention in between the Death card and the Devil. You have that presence of an angel looking out for you, helping you find that middle path. And then after the Tower, while it's still dark, one author talks about you're covered in ash because everything has crumbled to the ground, but there is that star. So there's another divine navigation. It's still night, it's still dark. So the Tower is followed by the star and the moon, but then segues into abundance. So this is the big three in tarot, and it's a very difficult season, though thankfully we get a couple boosts from the divine and also from the process to know that we're on the right path. So from a looking at an entrepreneur journey, we have that first line almost through the second line past the midpoint. This is where the executive dashboard, you're looking back, you're looking forward, making those decisions about a reluctant entrepreneur. Then we have that reveal of those 5 cards that I just discussed. And then once you're through it and out it, you're on the home stretch, and there's only a couple cards left in the major arcana. So it goes from that entrepreneur card to the success. So it's important to note, though, that this is part of the journey. It can be very easy to get stuck in the big three, in that closure, that doubt, that failure to decide, this is not for me. I can't do this. I can't go back. I wasn't supposed to do this anyway. I think for the reluctant entrepreneur, the doubts and the limiting beliefs are likely even higher. I knew I couldn't do this. I knew I shouldn't have gone on this. But the reality of this and looking at the entrepreneurial journey as part of like the fool's journey in tarot is, yeah, sometimes you're going to feel foolish, but also if you think about it as part of the journey or part of the cycle, it becomes less personalized. So failure is still painful, but if it's not personal and you know that after that you're going to emerge stronger, it can help. So looking closer at the failure card, we have actually a pier that's deteriorating and it's surrounded by a building that's deteriorating as well as filled with sand. So there's that kind of enmeshment, things on top of each other. You have some light coming through, but the light is only coming through because it's falling apart and it's falling down. And the interesting thing about the sand and the water is it creates ripples, so you have that movement, that motion, but at the same time, everything just feels broken down and depressing and dark. We actually had to tinker with this card to make sure that it even printed because it has such a darkness to it to make sure that you could actually see it. So while the tower is associated with a tower that's falling and it's essentially a structure that's going to go down into rubble, the failure card, you see it's already rubble. It's not really clear what this was before. It was a structure, it had a pier, it was going somewhere, and now it's just kind of covered and forgotten and frankly pretty depressing. But that's a tower. It's not a fun card. It doesn't mean you won't be better having after you've survived it, but at the same time, failure can be such a brutal lesson. So Nelson Mandela is the quote on this one. Do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got up again. So such a beautiful quote, such a powerful perspective. And that's one of my favorite commercials. So there's a Converse commercial, the Dwayne Wade, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. So I reference that in the podcast as well, but essentially you see him just on his butt and sliding across the floor and missing, but then in that last time gets up and slam dunks it. So with failure, we also have to think about like, are you going to get up again? Are you going to try again? And in the podcast episode, one of the things that I say is it's only failure if you stop. So otherwise it's part of the cycle and you can keep moving. So again, you've seen this card before. The tower, it's rough. There's so many ways to die in this card, so many ways to kind of have the destruction. But at the same time, there are some positive benefits to this card. It's kind of like this is associated with the Tower of Babel. So essentially, it's the false idols, the false gods. So the tower and the structures you have around you when you hit the tower or the relationships, some of them are not going to survive. They're not strong enough. They aren't going to go where you're going. And so while it's very painful to have those things end, especially not because you chose them, it's part of the process. So in 78 Degrees of Wisdom, Rachel Pollack says, the universe and the human mind will not allow us to stay forever imprisoned in our towers of illusion and repression. If we cannot free ourselves peacefully, then the forces of life will arrange an explosion. So as much as you can, free yourself peacefully because the tower can just be a brutal and challenging card. So I wanted to share, if you have the deck and you're able to hold it in your hands, it comes with a book, but this is also on the website. So if you hit this book card, it'll pop up on the icon and talk more about failure as well as the tower. And so I just wanted to share this as part of the video because there's a complexity to this card, but it also has an important message. So as if proof that facing the devil is not worth the risk, the card that follows is the foundation shaking, lightning striking, falling out of the window tower. The tower is not a subtle card, it's a revolution and upheaval. Having your foundations rocked and watching what you built crumble can be devastating. However, do not lose the message of the tower. Your structures of safety are not strong enough to hold your potential. You are being challenged to live a different and/or bigger life than the one you are living. Every system upgrade requires a reboot. So this is not to gloss over the tower because it definitely is usually a challenging upheaval unless you've been actively seeking kind of this level of a reboot. But at the same time, in order to make time and space for those upgrades, you do have to have that reboot. So questions to consider: who defines whether or not you fail? What are you learning from this that will serve you moving forward? What do you need to fortify your next foundation? And how might upheaval serve you or your business? If you want to listen, there is an episode on failure, season 4, episode 5. What's interesting is I actually referenced the Fool's Journey, though I don't think we knew yet that this was going to be a tarot deck. I'm not sure exactly the point at which we decided that the podcast wouldn't just be a regular book, but it would be a tarot deck. But it does come up in the episode. And frankly, it made me kind of uncomfortable because tarot wasn't something that I usually talked about in a business context. And hey, look at me now. The song for this is Weezer, "Say It Ain't So." So what's interesting is "Say It Ain't So" starts so chill. Even in the song, "Guess I'll just close my eyes. Oh yeah, all right, feels good inside." And then it starts to build. Something's bubbling behind my back. The bottle is ready to blow. Then the beat drops. "Say it ain't so." And then talks about heartbreaker. My love is a life taker. So frankly, the tower and failure is heartbreaking. It's hopefully not life-taking, but if you look at the tower card in tarot, it is a life taker. It talks about, I can't confront you. I could never do that which might hurt you to try and be cool. So even looking at the tower does for us what we couldn't confront or we couldn't do. So sometimes there are things or people that aren't serving us, products, clients, and the tower shakes those loose and burns those away. He talks about a water slide away from me that takes her further every day. So you have that natural disaster sense with the water slide, and it comes up later when they talk about flood. And as the song continues to build, there's kind of an ominous build where, dear daddy, I write you despite years of silence. So there's a lot of like addressing, revisiting, looking at that darkness, and the song ends the opposite of chill with that heavy beat and then also the feedback, the noise and the feedback. So to me, when I draw the tower, or in this case, failure, "Say it ain't so" is just the line that comes to mind because it's a challenging pull. It means that you're gonna have to buckle up and it's gonna get a bit rocky, and not everything or person that is with you now is gonna be with you on the other side. But at the same time, it's part of the journey, it's part of the process, and it does say, one of the authors that I quote in this series when talks about if you've hit a low point in the cycle, it's a sure sign that you're moving. So this is a lower point in the cycle where you kind of get broken down to get built back up. But I still have that "say it ain't so" moment when I see this card. So if you'd like to learn more, Tiffany makes weekly videos on our Instagram for @ReluctantEntrepreneurTarot. You can check out the website where this video, the rest of the description, these questions, the podcast episode, and different ways to work with us. So if you are in the process of the tower, I wish you well. Remember that it's part of the journey. Remember that there are benefits to the tower, though my heart is with you, not my favorite card, and best wishes.